Tenzin Dorjee
Let us cultivate the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings. With that kind of bodhicitta motivation, that we should all participate in this teaching. In cultivating the altruistic motivation or bodhicitta motivation, what we realize is that we are seeking complete enlightenment as our ultimate spiritual goal for the benefit of others and ourselves. And another kind of motivation that we may cultivate or have is to be free from samsara, to be liberated from samsara, because we do not want to be in samsara. And then another level of motivation that we may cultivate or have is that in our next life we do not want to be reborn in unfortunate states of rebirth, but we would rather like to find fortunate rebirths such as the one we have now, a precious human life, or to be reborn as a celestial or a divine being. So those are the three levels of motivation or types of motivation that we could have or we could cultivate. And the fact of the matter is that all of us have this precious human life, and so even though this life is very precious and it is a great life for spiritual development, we also need to reflect on what kind of problems and suffering we experience in our life.
That thing any and tang around to me you think color you do tan and they very tenzu chunju ta nyawa ta gida tunro some tang bin that chunju shi chagu.
If we compare whatever problems and suffering we experience in our human life to those of suffering of the beings in the unfortunate states of rebirth, such as hell beings, then relatively speaking, our problem of suffering becomes very small and insignificant. That being said, we might feel that whatever problems and suffering we face in our life, they seem to be, at times very overwhelming for our own experience. So when we encounter problems and suffering, it is very important for us to investigate what brings us problems and suffering. What kind of causes bring us suffering? What kind of karmas or karmic actions bring us suffering? If we, in our investigation, feel as if other people are responsible for our suffering, it is as if others are hurting us or bringing us suffering, I think we are, wrong in making that blaming others. When others, hurt us, we don't deny that, but that at the most is what we call the unfavorable conditioning factor that others has provided. But that is not the real cause of our problem or suffering. In other words, others' action is not the karma that is responsible for our sufferings. So there, what really brings us suffering is our own karma or karmic action. So if we ask ourselves, how could we be responsible for the sufferings we experience? If we look at how the delusions in our mind, or the deluded states of mind that we have inside us, such as attachment, anger, pride and arrogance, jealousy, and so on. These delusions in our mind, they motivate us, they instigate us to engage in negative karmic actions, which bring us all the sufferings. So the delusions, are just only, listed few in our mind are numerous. But deep down, it is from our grasping at the self, which is a fundamental ignorance we have, arise all other forms of delusion, such as attachment and anger.
Ranjula, Rang, Susi Juliape, Ran Susi Juliape, Danzi Maripate, and then Ran Dungi Yojita, Sawat the Chaviers. Dungi, Tata, Mandivi Canina, Sonsate, Ranjuliape, Maribat in the Shoners.
So the real source of our problems and suffering lies within our own mind. In our own mind, one's own mind stream, we have this ignorant conception of grasping at I or self. It is basically this grasping which is the real source or the cause of our problems and suffering.
Maripi Wanki, any single neta, Toba Nabatende, and Ranji Shaving.
It's because of that fundamental ignorance we have inside our mind that we experience many kinds of distorted, mental approach.
That's singular country generation, Matapala Tabrans in below.
So, what kind of distorted mental approach rises in our mind? If you ask, for example, we have this distorted mental approach that sees that which is impermanent as permanent. So in other words, we have a misconception or distorted conception in our mind that perceives that which is impermanent as being permanent. And now we really need to understand how that kind of a distorted mental approach, it damages us, it destroys us. So it is from that kind of, distorted mental approach we call Chunmin Yiche in Tibetan. And the example I just gave is, seeing that which is impermanent as being permanent. And how that is very damaging to the self is, now when we see ourselves as permanent, and when we grasp at our life as being permanent, although our life is impermanent, but we see and grasp at our life as being permanent, then really what happens is, we find ourselves so much caught up with the worldly activities, which could only benefit this lifetime, because we see as if we are going to live forever.
So Tenzin Dorjee, ane hele thado sheya ta, ane hele jande jeya ta, tagana yen ta. Yes, that kind of can't Chamalo Taminde Migivile, Chamalo, and it Tenzin Wang Sungers.
So out of grasping at the permanence of life, we could find ourselves engaging in many negative and worldly actions, such as being jealous of others, and even go to the extent of fighting and killing others and so on.
Sometimes that Matapa topi look and you shaving, Chamataba topi look share and you shaving. And it yen Jari J at the yen Corsetta, are a contra Magella Sobatat and days done young Macan Penna. Mikita Sunny Children at the ring de Lane, Mikan control long and that the check the Timulas of the days that Timu but retina. And a yen Chawa Sayata, a dollar contra Sayata, and a Norla child that the design young Maras called. You make him a damn of a Hako and that's some of pay. On the
other hand, if we realize that life is impermanent, and so from that kind of realization, we will be able to stop many negative actions and worldly actions, such as becoming jealous of others, or becoming angry with others, or getting attached obsessively to others, and hurting others, and so forth. And let me give you an example to state my point here more strongly. imagine that a person has got only one more day to live, so that means he could live only today and tomorrow he's dead. Of course, this person in his mind has got the seeds of the delusions. We don't deny that. But even if others get mad with him, or others are very attached to him, or jealous of him, whatever, once he sees the frivolousness of all these things, so what's the point of, fighting with those who are angry with you, or getting attached to those who are so attached to you, or becoming jealous of others who are jealous of you? Because after all, he has a day to live. It makes no sense, absolutely. So in such a case, this person, even though has got the seeds of delusion in his mind, but I don't think he's going to waste his time to be more delusional and more worldly, because time is limited.
Namching him, gom Jul Shabby and Ata, Sani Mikita, Shiganati, Koran here, the Park Shabanaki, Tangaran so Matabato Lord and Jason. At the leaking was Sonsa and Karinata McGee, Rim Humbuki, and Kago.
In our mind, we plan to live as if we will live forever. And so that's why we need to, develop the awareness of impermanence of life, death and dying aspect of life. So that's why we really need to do meditation to cultivate such an awareness of impermanence of life. So when we do that, as we learned from Lamrim, treatises, that the time of death is uncertain in our case. And so which means, we could die any time. And so when we really realize that fact of our life through meditation, then we have this feeling that as if we are like that person who has one more day to live, or even not one more day to live. See? So when we have that sense of impermanence in us, we are not going to find ourselves caught up with worldly concerns and activities. So what I'm saying here, my point is that all of us have got the distorted mental approach of seeing that which is impermanent as being permanent, and it is because of that grasping at permanence of things and life that we find ourselves, preoccupied with worldly concerns and activities. So now we got to understand and realize, try to realize, life is not permanent; it is impermanent. And then we have, other kinds of distorted mental approach as well. And another one is, for example, we have distorted mental approach of seeing that which is misery or suffering as being pleasurable, or as pleasure or happiness.
Ani kowe ne ke dewa kandiki ne kowe ne dewa kandiki ne ani donghe karang ke madam have.
Whatever temporary pleasures and happiness we find in samsara, in reality these pleasures or suffering, pleasures or happiness are in the nature of misery or suffering. That's what we need to understand. Why, if you ask, or how is that, if you ask, out of the three types of suffering, temporary pleasures and happiness that we experience in samsara are, as a matter of fact, a form of suffering, and they are a suffering of change.
동해 지금 뭐 이제 조수에서 돼요래 뭐 저거요래 제가 아니 됐다고 다 템보다 되는 매버션 아니 동해 가랑이 이제 조수 요었던 저거요래.
Pleasures and happiness we find in samsara are almost like ready to become a suffering any moment, any given moment. That is to say that these pleasures are not going to last forever. The happiness we find in samsara is not stable and lasting because any moment they could become suffering.
Yeah. I think it's a human payment for here, Charina, Sabato, Shaving, and Dusres. When Ran and say him would have been those Chani. That they Chani and he said this long shaving, that call any choky merchants. So, Mazivation, anti Dungegata, none to be Chago, Dungeg, Tangi say him would be Jimbo Shavit, Devati, Dungikan or Joint, say the Maguba shed, tea, thinking nation winner, Dungikarita, Dunging or gibberish.
I gave many examples to illustrate this point in my previous teachings, but let me give an example to state my point for the sake of new people here. Let's take an example of some food that you like it very much, you enjoy it like anything. Now, if you eat that food, beyond the limit, if you overeat it, then you can know that, what you started off as being so much excitement and pleasure of eating the good food you always wanted, once you overeat it, then it hit the negative satisfaction, and now it started to create a problem. You see, you got to have a sense of contentment and moderation in eating. Otherwise, you go beyond that limit. Now, the food which you thought would make you really happy, now it started to kick in some problems. Of course, now you can think of many more examples, like, whether it is smoking or drinking alcohol or doing drugs, or you just name it. Maybe at the beginning it looks like it brings you some satisfaction and pleasure. Smoking brings you some satisfaction and pleasure, or doing drugs brings you some, feeling high, and doing alcohol, But at the end of the thing, what we realize is these things, they bring us more problems and suffering. It is as if like these are the ways to invite more problems to us. We become sick, and we get all kinds of issues in our life. Then we got another major distorted mental approach of seeing that which is impure as being pure. Let's just take example of our own body. In reality, our body is not really pure and clean, but somehow we always want to feel like, okay, my body is really clean and pure. How can we say that our body is really in reality not a pure body or clean in the sense because the causes which give rise to our body are to begin with problematic causes because those are contaminated karmic actions and delusions. So our own deluded states of mind and contaminated karmic actions have produced this body.
Tanda temba nyage yigna lu temba nya yes ani masang la sang ta to lu masang la sang tende ke gom je mang bo yos tande shanshu sodu na ta.
In the context of 37 what we call factors which accord with an enlightenment, Changzhou Sodun. And within that we find a set called four mindfulnesses, or four close mindfulnesses. And so one of the close mindfulness is being mindful of one's body. So in cultivating that mindfulness, we reflect upon the impure constituents of our body. What kind of elements and constituents have given rise to our body, and so we will find out that our body is not created necessarily out of pure elements and constituents. And then there is what called distorted mental approach of seeing that which is selfless as being, self existence. Now this is a major distorted mental approach. Let me do it again. That we have a distorted mental approach of seeing that which is selfless as being self-existent. So when we talk about different types of ignorance that we have, the fundamental basic ignorance is to do with this distorted mental approach of seeing that which is selfless as being self-existent. Cultivating the wisdom that sees just opposite of self-existence, in other words, the wisdom realizing selflessness is the path that we should cultivate, which leads us to freedom from suffering. Great Indian master Acharya Chandrakirti states in his work, as Geshe quoted the lines from his memory, he said that seeing selflessness liberates sentient beings from the state of samsara and its suffering. And then he goes on to explain that there are two types of selflessness. So basically, the two selflessnesses are selflessness of a person, Kangsa Kitagme, and selflessness of phenomena, Chugitagme. So once we cultivate wisdom, realizing these two types of selflessness, we would be able to free ourselves from samsara. The opponents of the two types of selflessness are the two forms of grasping at self. That is, in other words, grasping at the self of a person and grasping at the self of phenomena. So how do these two graspings perceive self to exist, or the selves to exist? Well, they see the selves to exist from their own side. They see the selves as beings, existing in and of themselves. So the two graspings we have are called lokshe, wrong perceptions or distorted perceptions. Why? Because when we look at grasping at the self of a person, it is a distorted perception in the sense that the self of a person does not exist in and of itself, but our grasping sees it as if the self of a person exists independently in and of itself. So it does not accord with the nature of reality. So when things don't accord with the nature of reality, there is the distortion. So there is a problem, you see. Now the same goes with grasping at the self of phenomena. The self of phenomena does not exist in and of itself or independently, but our grasping at this self sees as if it distorts the picture and sees as if the self of phenomena exists in and of itself. So therefore, this grasping is a distorted perception in the sense that the way it sees the self of phenomena to exist is distorted. It does not accord with the reality.
No, that thing Kanzada Chue Dadenzibi, Dangzi Maripate, Kovitsawa Chagers, Madame Koa Kogoyag, Kovitsawa Chagers.
So the root cause of our problem of being in samsara, caught up in samsara, is basically our grasping at self, which consists of grasping at the self of a person and grasping at the self of phenomena.
Kovitsawa said, Rara Susu, Real Mato, me Ginda Tinyande Shutin David Maris.
So when we talk about being caught up in samsara and finding the cause of samsara, we always have to look within our own state of mind. That the real root cause of samsara is in our own state of mind, in one's own state of mind, and because of that, one is caught up in samsara. So we cannot look for them, as if other people got them, or they are in samsara. Samsara is out there, and the cause of samsara grasping is out there in other people's mind, as if, I don't have it. That is the wrong understanding. Each of us got the root cause of samsara in our mind, and because of that, we are in samsara.
Sinti Kangagan, Koala Yongi Koba Tanjuga, Kanga Koa Tina, and Koa Bangdi than Mato Kare Kanza Susuga, and Koa Pang at the then maybe challenge. So when we look at every sentient being who is caught up in samsara, the real cause of the samsara, that's the grasping itself, exists in their minds. So whenever we get rid of that from one's own mind, then we as individual beings are free from samsara. You see? Kangale ani Koatik Shene, Yamde so Yina, and quality Yande so Kanga, Senki Kanga Yandu Tagu Mato, Sosu Tai Kabuja, the transit of the tactician, Koa Sosu Rangil, Koa Sosu Rangil Dugu by Yimbate, Koribekation Hakogu was.
So if we take time, and if you take time to investigate, the nature of samsara, what does it mean to be in samsara, and where is the real cause of samsara, you'll be able to understand what I just explained to you. Samsara is not out there as if it is a one environment out there, and then all of beings who are in samsara as if we share that world system. If that is the case, then when we talk about being free from samsara, whenever that happens, then everybody should be free from that samsara, because that's the world we share. But samsara is related to our own individual personal state of mind, consciousness. So therefore, when an individual person makes efforts and frees himself or herself from samsara, right? So once the individual person gets rid of the grasping of self from within his or her mind, then that person is free from samsara. See, so that tells us that the notion of samsaric existence and the cause of samsara exists within an individual person. It is not out there. See, everybody else still could be in samsara.
So that thing, that's Dana Sosu Shoshin, Ranjili Yopi, Danzi Marubati, Meba Zoyagata,
So the point I'm trying to make here is, as we have seen in Tibetans, that you need to recite your Tara prayers. That is to say that if you want to be free from samsara, you got to work at it yourself. You need to realize that grasping at self that exists in your mind is the real cause of samsara, and by getting rid of that, you can be free from samsara. So you need to do that, and you cannot let it, wait other people to do that for you.
Ani tap ten ho me ba zoy ga tap rang yin la ten ya ke ani nyu ba da dam ba jung ya ke che do ani sum chue le lo jung che ge re gom che ge re chang ma lu tu shi ba.
So the purpose of engaging in listening to teaching, contemplation and meditation is to uproot delusions from within our own state of mind. And so through that, as we learn the techniques or the methods to do that, to free ourselves from mental obscurations and free ourselves from the mental obscurations, so we are also able to share those techniques or the methods with others, so that others will be able to adopt the techniques, do the practice themselves, and free themselves from mental obscurations.
Maripi wang ke te le lesa le jawang ta le ta nyamo ni bod nyande sudam ni te khol khwa imbe ha ko she ta maripa me ba zoya kharis na dami to be sher ranjul nge ba she gu yores.
So we should understand in a nutshell the perfect formula to get into samsara is that we have the basic fundamental ignorance of grasping of self, and that gives rise to other forms of delusion, and those give rise to the negative karmic actions. So when we have all of these things happening, that is the perfect formula to be in samsara and stay in samsara. Now, if we want to get out of samsara, the perfect formula is to cultivate the wisdom realizing selflessness, which counteracts our grasping at self and uproots it, and that's how we get out of samsara.
So, tenda call khoya de tenda yela kyun gon khogu yore tenda yela kyun ge nani tambu chawa te maripate chawa re diores.
If we want to really get the complete picture of how we come into samsara, then we have to study what is called the chain of 12 interdependent links, Tenzin Dorjee, and the chain of 12 interdependent links gives us the complete process, understanding the complete process through which we come into samsara, and the first dependent link is ignorance.
That is all. Maripi lesa, Maripi wank and Nimba Duje Lesa, Mariba saw she, like you can Nimba and Duje Sego, Lese, but lay Gavata Magi attacking in the test, Maribi on the side.
So out of ignorance, which is the first dependent link, we create karmic actions. This could be good and bad karmas, and that's why the second dependent link is called karmic formation. So once we form the karmas, good, bad, or neither, then these karmas deposited their imprints on our mental consciousness, which is the third dependent link. So from this we can understand how we create different types of karmas that precipitate our rebirth in different states of samsara, states of samsara. So that is my prelude this morning before returning to continue teaching the text.
then I said that juntation us, Shambatan, Hinge, Shanju, same sooner, around the Yenike, don't chamber to be dreams, Canada.
So last week we have seen great, Domdamba, concludes his, a set of answers that if one cultivates great love, great compassion, and bodhicitta, not only would one be able to bring tremendous benefits to other sentient beings, but one is also able to benefit oneself, tremendously.
Then Chimbon drip a jeans, then that Chimbon drag a jut at the inside.
So those are the real causes of bringing great benefits to both self and others. Those meaning great love, great compassion, and bodhicitta.
That then Chimbon drip a jeans, then Chimbo the Hakogres. Then the Zig jut and the symbol the Zig jeans. Then Chimbo the Hamagona in the Yamas. Then Chimbo Garazana, Rang any Ranta Yange Tendo. Toja and the Sanji Compato interest.
So those are the real causes to fulfill great purpose, benefiting self and others. Now we need to understand what is a great purpose here, Tenchembo. The great purpose in this context refers to finding complete enlightenment for the sake of others and oneself.
That in that end, that during the good matre, Kasan Chinsan days.
Now we will continue from where we left off last time.
That day, writing those, that don't Javi Juni, any user to that writing the writing that writing use Gambali good. So that chatting it, any joy occurring, don't the Javi Juni Kunari. The Conte unit. Joe Tikis, Skur shapes. That George says, and could give tickets, that George and could give it. Yes, I say, make tickets, that me could give tickets. And they score shapes. She said, the scorching a solution paying and do not go to Matemare. She could say at the Gumbe Shady Corjagata.
Now we are beginning a new, if we will passage here. And it says here that once Domdamba observed at Redding, meaning Domdamba founded the great Redding monastery, and that was his seat monastery, and he lived there. And so at one time he saw a gentleman or a person, sir, he says Joe, was circumambulating the monastery.
That teacher Global Coraje the Hidaya Boris, Joe, Koa Shepa Young, Low Gatis, and Asim Gabayas, Boris, Yinaya, Davis, Tele Jani, Church Ranshena Megams, Tagama Rebesca.
So then Domdaba asked the person, he said, Sir, I'm really happy to see you going around the monastery, circumambulating. But don't you think it is better to do, dharma or spirituality?
No. That is only any miti, any roti sambalas, miti sambalas. That Kowashi Badeli, any Tiwachimin, don't love any kitchen, Chiam, and Stak, Chulon, Garmanderson. And Sanji Jumdi, the song be cut in the Mandos, Kora Jabale, I think Gaga Sari, Chesan Kwan, somebody China, Chulon, David.
So then the person thought that, well, maybe circumambulating the temple is really not dharma, so it is better for him to spend time reading holy scriptures which contain the words of Buddhas. So then he decided to do that.
Bungarevi Chemsus, Cholosa, any Flagangata, Shilota, Panchan of the little old daddy in Burma.
So then he decided to sit in the corridor of a monastery and read the holy scriptures.
And then young Tembecan is dying from the jungle in the console penny, Conga, young Drum, and then Chur Lobo and Low got this. Tranga days in Sanjig, soon be got to the lawyer that he died. What is governors? David Johnson, Delichan, Churanga, David Johnson, church runs in the gun. That's a law by Churang church in the government rivers. That's gone.
So then the Dom Temple saw him, sitting in the corridor of the monastery and reading holy scriptures. And then Dom Temple said, "Oh, I'm happy to see you read scriptures here, sir, but don't you think it is better to do Dharma, spirituality?"
Oh, yeah. That correct sometimes. Oh, that thing. Sure, Lobert, that the, what is it? Chunyanishibati, Unguya Sama, Chunguya Samari. Tan Korang doesn't that. Young Koy Sambalas, Loba wages, Chu Loba Debale, Lo Debale, thing is a gomna, and a capture. Dainam has that. Kong cut to tell Chu Goa Chu Lo Trishabale, Gomjen Deguete, that them Mendos, that gone in that Korando, so in a Gomjen.
So then the person thought that, well, I think it seems like circumambulating the monastery is not considered, real Dharma practice. And reading the Holy Scriptures is also not considered real Dharma practice. Now, I think what really Dom Tempa was indicating or suggesting, he thought, was that he should really sit in meditation. Now, that's what Dharma practice is all about.
Loba Shulnes, lawyer to Yanis, Shuls and Yanis, Yani, Maldus, Miss May, there's a make to the time those much some shape, make some shin, those in any doctors in the day doing.
So then he stopped reading the Holy Scriptures and sitting nicely on his cushion or the seat, and he really looks good in eyes closed and in a meditation posture. He looked like he's doing meditation. So then he sat in meditation. So as maybe Geshe must be demonstrating it to you, how sometimes, some meditators, they're really good at, doing the showpiece here, right? They close the eyes and then slightly open it and then close the eyes, as if they are in a deep meditation. Yeah. So he's, doing a good pretension there.
That is dead you talk on those days, and don't remember and chili penny. Gompanya lower goddess, they which a church runs in a Gahamson. Tura Gonji at that time, what is? I wouldn't do Singagawa is in there. And I church munition a church in a woman, those kind of.
And then Dom Tempa saw him sitting in meditation, and then he said, "Oh, sir, I'm happy to see you do meditation, but don't you really think you should do real Dharma practice?"
And that this one is an ente, Yen Shata Maninista. How call Tambo Sun is an Kanti Marita, and Tambo does in the gorgeous and that day Yani Chelo on the government of Chelo. That day Yani and Gomjet. Ta Koranga Tony, she had done money in a country sugar. And then that country sugar in this door, but then she said money in the Koran talking of sadness. And they hear last, that don't they join you in the last. Well, not that church, get out with Geshes. Sure, can't it sugar stuff? Yeah, Hubert, that country sugar.
So now he is completely lost, he did not bother to ask great Dom Tempa right from the beginning, He was doing circumambulation and Dom Tempa made a comment, and then he just went on his way, and then he started reading the Holy Scriptures. Then Dom Tempa came and made a comment, and then he changed that into doing meditation. So he did what he wanted to do, and he did not bother to ask Dom Tempa for help. But now he's completely lost. He thought, okay, I tried all those. If all of those things are not Dharma, I better ask him. So then he said, the great master, now, so could you, tell me how to do Dharma practice,
That is only any Domdejo in Junior, Jenny, Jaws, good jobs. Send the left tons can number. Send the early. Send the left tons can number.
And so when he asked Dom Tempa for advice, how to do real Dharma practice, Dom Tempa said, "Sure, sir, you should renounce, worldly life.
这的乐同是，这的乐同送给是的，对呢，这的乐马同呢，这些讲确实马送的是的，还有是呢，这送给个人呢，让个这的乐马同呢，确主要等于的确实往的送确实么这一大差个人是，这干的多。
So Kadampa actually repeated himself twice. He said, renounce your life, renounce your life. So then he goes and explained that if you do not renounce your life, then whatever you do, it's very hard for what you do becomes real spirituality or Dharma practice. Why? Because then you get caught up with the worldly concerns, 8 worldly concerns.
他我呢今天确实来满的那可以用个什呢？现地呢，number 多吧，le mare，现地 number 多吧le通呢，这些确实他满的吧的，今天确实的le马通呢，让个呢确实吧的，今天确实我能做，但你可全部要 rest。
So if we do not give up or renounce 8 worldly dharmas or concerns, then whatever we do, they get, mixed with or marred by 8 worldly concerns, and then it does not become, real spiritual practice or spirituality.
大抵那嘞，现地那边多吧了，通那是他可能是现地让个现地，那下家的了通吧因那是。So if
we renounce this worldly attitudes concerns, then whatever dharma or spirituality we do, it really becomes pure spirituality or dharma, not mixed with the worldly concerns. So when our practice of the Dharma does not get mixed with worldly concerns and attitudes, then our really practice can become spiritual path leading to nirvana or liberation. So the person, when he started circumambulating the monastery, probably he did it not out of pure spiritual motivation, but he just kind of did it for some social reasons. He thought, okay, everybody else in my community is doing that, so I got to go and do it. Otherwise people will yakety at me, and so then people will kind of not consider me as a part of the community, so I got to just kind of do the social thing here. And probably for the same reasons he did reading of the Holy Scriptures. So with no understanding of the what is said in the Scriptures, so he pretty much parroted the Scriptures. He just kind of did superficial reading of the text. And without understanding of what meditation is and how to do it properly, he just pretty much mimicked other people's way, and he thought, well, others are doing meditation and I'll just sit and do the same thing. And so that also became a worldly concern and worldly activity. So the lessons we learn from this is when we engage in our spiritual practice or spirituality, we should have the pure motivation to do that, and we must not dedicate our practice to fulfill some worldly needs and worldly aims. So whether we do prayers or we do meditation or any other practice, if we think about future lives and reflecting on and understanding the suffering nature of samsara, if we do our practice to benefit our future lives, then I think what we practice becomes spirituality or dharma. And if we go a little beyond that and think that, okay, I'm going to practice in order to free myself from samsara, right, with that kind of a motivation, if we seek nirvana, of course we got better here. And, our practice of spirituality, it becomes a pure practice and higher level practice. And of course, if we do our practice with altruistic motivation, bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of all other sentient beings and ourselves, then of course we have the best motivation, to do our practice, and our practice becomes spiritual practice and is of the highest level practice.
Then Jumdu Jerry Junior, he Poto. I got the Hindu. I raised Kubricena, Church Cure my impe. Nanti the Kanlas. Nanti Susan, the Church Cure my impe, some the conductor race canamra.
Now a new segment begins here. Great Geshe Potava asked Great Domtemba a question. The question concerns with how do we distinguish between that which is spiritual or dharma and that which is not spiritual. What is the borderline here? What is the demarcation line that distinguish between dharma and not dharma? That's the question Geshe Potava asked Domtempa.
Geshe Potava the Sanjima Shepherd the Domti Jerry Juni Kadampa Geshe Nami George that Homa George young dress.
Geshe Potava was, one of the great, disciples of great Adisha, a very highly respected and, well-known Kadampa Geshe.
Geshe Potava Kong, Church Came my Sansan to Kong Chenga the Yena, Shinju Dujang Razatabel and Dusinita, Goni, and condition numbers.
Of course, Geshe Potava should really have no doubt about what is Dharma or what is not Dharma. But he basically asked the question with which to benefit, other, sentient beings, including us.
Like us, okay. That little, then be here, said that. That put the any calendar does not know. No movie near Donna. Chu Yins, Mondana Chu means that touch of a Kusundo. Rang the Chu Doyate, Rangeli in Yamota, Yambo Drogondona, Chu regularis. The Yambo Drogomondana Chu means Kana.
And then Geshe Domtempa answered, he said, if what you do, it becomes an antidote to counteract delusions, then it is Dharma. If it does not become an antidote to counteract your delusions, it is not Dharma. So Geshe Domtempa came out very clear-cut answers. He did not beat around the bush. He just said it straight. If what you do becomes an antidote to your delusions, that is Dharma. If it doesn't, it is not Dharma.
Yambo sometimes when you say that I'm going to come with Ali used to go down and running chains that I did it. Did later, did about Kunta, but calendar that. Did about Kunta, Muntina Chu Tuna Chu means what I think.
And then the next Domtempa said, if what you do, it goes along with other worldly people, it is not Dharma. If what you do does not go along well with other worldly people, so let me do it again. He said, if what you do does not go well along with what other worldly people do, it is Dharma. But if it goes well along with what other worldly people do, it is not Dharma. What do you think?
Can I change means? They done did it, and they you think say at any. That cancel is in the 나가서 강가 강사 인다 등 인다 시고가 말했어. 이때 봐서야 그 가래에서는 단다 이제 최제 단이 튀고도나 최 말했어. 문제는 최 인생 나랑 해야 돼.
So let's do the rewording here. You know, the worldly here, if what you do does not accord with the world, that's how it literally said here, then it is dharma. If what you do accords with, goes well along with the world, it is not dharma. So, I mean, the word people is not there. It just crept into my translations. I need to correct that. So the Geshe-la's commentary, explanation on this is, of course, you know, there's no way Domtaba is suggesting that we should not get well along with other people. Okay, he's not saying that don't talk to them or socialize with them or whatever. What he's saying is that what we do, if it accords with world, meaning worldly concerns, you know, worldly activities, then it is not dharma. But if what we do does not accord with the world, meaning worldly concerns and activities, then it is dharma.
No, that is it. Tantani use Tante Hechamadoa. Kaluntan, Tuna Chu inseta. Kalunta twins a Cassia and Indreta, Kalunzi and the Nere, Gajakam to be soon to some of the Cassia. That lose it in Alane, Kai Gonde, thank you to that thank you Namda Yorvala. Control the new Tuna Chu is, maintain a Chu means it.
And then Jomdaba said, if what you do, it accords with, it agrees with what we find, you know, in the scriptures, then it is dharma. If what you do, if it does not agree with or accord with what is in the scriptures, it's not dharma. Now the Tibetan term here used is, you know, I use the word scriptures to include everything, because it says ka lung. If we split the word ka is the term we use to refer to Buddha's words, in other words, sutra. And lung literally means transmission, but in this case it refers to commentarial treatises or shastras. So basically what Domtama is saying is that if what you do, if it agrees with, if it accords with what is said in the sutra and shastra, then it is dharma. If it does not accord with what is said in sutra and shastra, it is not dharma. So if we try to simplify it, basically Domtama is saying that if what you do, if it agrees with what Buddha's teachings, then it's dharma. If it does not go, you know, agree with Buddha's teachings, it's not dharma. Let's begin.
Rango Duju Chute, David Zambo Yunguduna. Yes, Zang that David Zambo Yunguna Church Chaguaris. David Zambo said that some Jenny Kid at the Mares, and Rango Chudre at the Gani Sata Lamchi, any at the Liga Comba Toya to Jun Drogoduna, and the trees. At the late mentor that they cherry Mares can.
And then Domtaba goes on to say that if what you do, it brings positive outcomes, it is dharma. If it does not bring positive outcomes, it's not dharma. So by here, Che Sangbo, which I translate as positive outcomes, it really has to do with what we do if it, produces, different levels of spiritual path and realizations, then it is dharma. So here the positive outcomes, does not refer to, any positive worldly outcomes, such as making profits and, making money and all that. Maybe that may be positive in another sense. But here, positive outcomes have to do with spiritual development and growth. So I'm going to go over them one more time, and if you need to take notes down, do that, and maybe someday I might do, surprise quiz.
C'est le tons canando.
So one of the important things Aditya said was renounce, your life, meaning worldly life. Why? Because if we do not renounce our worldly life, then what we do does not become, real spirituality or dharma. So when the great Geshe Tsultim asked Domtamba to explain what is the borderline that distinguishes between that which is dharma and that which is not dharma, then the first thing Domtamba said was, if what you do becomes an antidote to your delusions, it is dharma. But if it does not, it is not dharma. And the next is that if what you do, if it agrees with or accords with the world, it is not dharma. And if it does not, it is dharma. So I think if everybody's writing it down, just do that. And the next, Domtamba said, if what you do, if it agrees with or accords with Buddha's teachings, it is dharma. And if it does not, it is not dharma. And then the last thing Domtamba said was, if what you do, if it brings positive outcomes, it is dharma. Positive outcomes meaning that what you do, if it, helps you to attain the, high, spiritual levels, paths, and grounds, or spiritual development, then it is dharma. And if it does not, it is not dharma.
Ya shwa shwe ta ma kalina ta chama lo kare sena kulon number ta kwata chue rang chue du ze kulon number ta kwata du ju chue ta yang ta xia ba she ani de ngwa ta ya ta pe zang bu chen ta de gwe de ka nang yo des.
If I summarize today's teachings here, what Great Domtamba is saying is that when we engage in spirituality or dharma, we should check with our motivation. Our motivation has to be pure motivation. And when we engage in the actual action or the practice, we should see that what we do as an action, it accords with the Buddha's teachings. It is dharma. And then at the end, we should do proper dedication. So basically, Domtamba is telling us that from the beginning to the end of our action, beginning with pure motivation, pure action in the middle, and pure dedication, that's how, we make our practice dharma.
Yes. That didn't take years. I need to that.
Can you show you?
You're not like that. Yes. I'm a jig, the blue put you as well.
Yes.
That put the fire you as well.
Yes.
I think can see that put the second door.
Oh, very nice.
Says that and is a pay monsieur that do Geshe.
Ming got it. Ming do
it. That means you do that.
Yes.
Who to make it single?
Yes.
What is boy's name? 7. 7, yes.
Oh, what do you get? I got it. Okay, so we have some prayer requests here, and I think that was a kind of quite a tragedy, as Geshe was trying to explain to me, that maybe a stepfather must have killed, his stepson, whose name is Seven Malani.
Tenzila.
No,
chance JS might take talk about the Amadel.
Yeah. So maybe Geshe think the relationship was not one of the marriage, but maybe is the significant other who is seen as a stepfather here and killed his stepson, which is a big tragedy here. And so his name is Seven Maloney, and so we pray for him. And then we have request to pray for two people who are dealing with health issues, June Simonelli and Alison Olstead. So for those who have, passed away, we dedicate our marriage for them to be able to find good rebirth, and so that they're able to take care of themselves spiritually. And for those who are dealing with health issues, we dedicate our prayers for them to recover from their sickness quickly, so that they are able to lead the remaining part of their life meaningful. Ani jawi gina be chebe tinji shebe tamba na shukuse shabe tamba da tuji gina da me hindo yo yo. Ani che donki sho phomo na ji. Hindi shawa na isan tan do bata. Geti kam de hin de minti be so da hin tinji lo so da me hindo yo. By the power of our collective merit, may Dharma flourishes throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other holy beings, masters, live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions are successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May these and other world environments be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality. In short, we dedicate our marriage for all kind mother sentient beings to be free from the fears and dangers of two types of mental obscuration, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly.
Ya que dice
que te inicio de chagin.
Honest.
Que papel urba.
Ore takare.
No.
Yes.